Okay, you're good to go, Ilja.
Okay, so hello from my side. My name is Ilja, and you have been working on the Waldur product for, well, from its inception, basically. And I think Henrik already mentioned that it's used within the EUM'25 Federation platform as a component for the resource allocation and management. And well, probably some of you have also had interactions with Waldur-based systems through at least Lumi. But I wanted to give a bit more a bit more background as to what Waldur is, and dig a bit into more of its architecture, or maybe rather use cases that it enables. So in very short, Waldur was designed as a cloud management solution with further extended with a marketplace for primarily cases for managing of internal clouds, meaning based on Slurms or OpenStack, or external. Essentially, it's quite generic in its design. Initially, it was designed primarily for the infrastructure services. However, over time, quite many different use cases have appeared where it's used also for providing consultancy services or just generic high-level services. It's quite mature, so we have been working that for many years, and the sustainability model is there. So there are several organizations that are paying for support, either to University of Tartu or company OpenNode, which is co-developing it, and well, there are contributions coming from quite a number of places. And as I mentioned before, it's used also within the EFP layer. Now, in very short, the problems that Waldur can help with are connected with enabling the self-service and reducing the operational overhead for the operator. So an operator can be an HPC site, or it can be a consortium that has access to several infrastructures. A common set of problems is initial onboarding of the users, management of teams, reporting, figuring out who can do what through service offering, through policy management, in some cases management of the resources themselves, as well as providing the help desk. So these are the main things that Waldur essentially ties together in some case, and makes it so that it's flexible enough to enable disable some of the functionalities or integrate with either existing systems or have something with batteries included within the product. Very roughly, it comes with several main modules. So probably one of the main one is the marketplace module, which defines the services which can be provided through Waldur. We have use cases where Waldur is used only for group management, essentially being like a graphical user interface to LDAP, but that's quite niche. So in majority of the cases, there is something that is distributed through Waldur, so that is modeled within the marketplace. And when a bit more specific thing comes into play, like for example, Slurm or OpenStack or cluster in the clouds, if you're familiar, or something like EFP, that is implemented through the set of plugins in the marketplace. So we have a generic logic in the marketplace plus specific extendable integration through plugins. Building on top, there is an access control layer. Access control is implemented through several streams. So some things can be used by the operator to, for example, limit the usage or put some thresholds or triggers on how things are done on the organization level. In some cases, this is can also be delegated to project managers that can essentially then have more flexibility as to how they run and operate the projects. The service desk integration is optional, but if there is something like Atlassian or Zammat or SMAX being used, then Waldur provides hooks so that you can provide essentially easier way to create better tickets. So enriching that with the context, again, from the same environment. Policies I've already mentioned. Notifications is essentially comes with several types. So notifications about essentially broadcasts where operator sends out information to the targeted audience, for example, specific organizations, users from specific organizations, or users of a specific service, or just notifications about things that are happening either in form of emails or webhooks for automation and integrations. We have been working also on the extension which allows to grant access to resources through the review process. So it will be a lightweight review portal intended for distribution of goods when the review is needed. So that should come out quite soon. Maybe coming back a bit to the initial principles of Waldur. So what we wanted to do from scratch is to make sure that it's open and flexible. Open meaning that we can showcase how things are working, and flexible that because Waldur is addressing a domain where a one-size-fits-all is a very complicated one. So basically, it's a governance of the collaboration. So it was quite clear that we would have a quite configurable product with many feature toggles and possible extension points. On the other side, we wanted to make sure that there is a somewhat common process, so that if we have two different organizations using Waldur, that at least some processes would be common there. And of course, we wanted to make sure that the interface is well, user-friendly. So we invest a lot into both front-end design and the improvements to the API integrations. So hopefully making it, well, it's not ideal, but we have a number of improvements in the pipelines and invest heavily into this. And finally, as Waldur is often a gatekeeper of sensitive resources, for example, we have deployments in a couple of government clouds, as well as the same EuroHPC deployments. Security is of high concern, so we try to implement it on quite many different steps, from the development pipelines to operational security, as well as pen testing, which is happening quite regularly with external companies doing that. Always room for improvements, but we're trying to. So these all three are essentially processes, meaning that this is what we like match the decisions against. Couple of things about the multi-tenancy. So each Waldur can handle many organizations and many projects. However, in some more complicated scenarios, we have multiple Waldurs running and potentially cooperating with each other. So this is the example of the federations. But within one Waldur, essentially, we have a concept of an organization that represents somebody who can at least purchase. In some cases, these organizations can also provide services, so it becomes a service provider, or organize calls, and then it becomes a call manager. Within the organizations, we have projects to split the resources, and you have a standalone concept of user, which can have multiple different roles in organizations, projects, service providers, and so on. So important is that the user is unique within Waldur, meaning that it's not per organization, as it's sometimes in systems, but within Waldur, user is a separate thing. And in many cases, it comes from the external identity providers, so as Mike's ID for EFP, or, well, let's say Keycloak in cases when there are organizational identity providers. Everything that is requested is in terms of resources goes through the ordering process. So order is a concept that essentially grasps the permission management for requests. So order needs to be confirmed by users both from the organization that requests that, as well as service provider. And order essentially ends up becoming a resource. So the resource can then be quite complicated, support quite complicated accounting and billing model. But for all the resources, we always know which project and organization it belongs to. So it's possible to construct showback and chargeback of granularity of resource consumption as needed. And it's quite flexible in the sense that each resource is defined by an offering. So it seems to be that it will be quite useful for the EuroHPC stack, where each of the hosting sites can potentially define their own resource allocation and billing logic. So it will be sort of similar in some process flows, but allowing for the flexibility for service providers to integrate without essentially rewriting their existing logic. Technically, we try to do the boring stuff, so use as popular technologies as possible. So the backend is based on the Django and Django REST framework. So this is codename Mastermind. Front end, the main front end is in the visual port is the home port written in React. We have a bunch of SDKs, so in different languages, as well as Ansible and soon Terraform for automation of the resource management through Waldur. On the backend, it's essentially Postgre, Celery for background processing, and RabbitMQ for internal message processing, as well as subscription for event-based notifications if somebody wants to be notified faster of changes inside Waldur. Everything is cloud native, scalable, can be upgraded with zero downtimes. So so far so good. Now about the use cases of Waldur. Essentially, there are two main approaches. In one case, Waldur is used for protecting the access or consolidating the access to different services that organization has access to. So, for example, this is the case for essentially user portals at specific sites. So where site has a collection of different infrastructure service offerings. Let's say for HPC, typically it's like Slurm and maybe OpenStack. And then Waldur essentially is like a storefront for getting access to those resources. Alternative can be, and this is, for example, the case for EuroHPC Lumi, where Waldur is used for sharing access to a common resource for different organizations. So Lumi is co-owned by, I think, what was it, around 10 countries, and then we have, I think, 30 organizations from those countries that can allocate resources. They do it through APIs, and Waldur enforces certain business logic related to multi-tenant resource allocation. So at the end of the day, Lumi is one big Slurm cluster, but the way how it's managed and integrated is through this Waldur thing. And in this setup, it can be another Waldur instance that talks to Waldur. It can be custom API integration. So there is a certain flexibility there. So as part of the operations, Waldur collects different information about people, projects, consumed resources, and so on, which actually enables to improve the observability of what's happening. So there are several mechanisms apart from accessing the operational database. You can also export that into Prometheus and have dashboards, which are either, let's say, quite trivial or potentially more complicated and depend on the metadata which is provided with resource consumption. It is currently used by a number of different organizations. Some logos just put on the picture. It is also used around the world, where we have a lightweight tracking of the source IPs of organizations that are running their instances and opted in for telemetry. To be honest, we know probably about this part more, but it's nice to see that there are users all over the world. Some are essentially matching just the AWS data centers, so we know it's running. As mentioned before, EFP is using Waldur for the resource orchestration. So in the architecture diagrams, it's referred as federated resource allocator. Essentially, it is used as a channel for propagating information from the EuroHPC allocation portal to the hosting entity sites, either directly to their to their user portals, or through a collaboration if sites support like that. So for Lumi, for example, this instance of Waldur will be essentially talking to Puhuri core which is another instance of Waldur, which is already directly integrated with Lumia identity management. And here maybe to highlight, so this federated workflow orchestrator is actually Lexis, which was mentioned before. So there is a certain flow of information between these two systems to reduce the duplication and make it work in a more transparent way. Some of you know, but Waldur has been a bit randomly chosen within the Castile project for aggregation of the service catalogs across different countries. So this, of course, is at the moment just a set of descriptions. So Waldur can also sort of suck in the data from the other instances. So if you want to build like a catalog of catalogs, there is a capability there. We'll see where it goes. It's actually an interesting approach where each of the organizations have the flexibility and power to decide as to what is offered and to whom, and express that policy in a certain way that the central instance respects and trusts and, well, enforces, so that there is, like, say, a common gateway for accessing the information on the European scale, as well as a way to enforce more potentially or extended options on the local level. We support currently Waldur API simply because of the technology risks, but generally speaking, this can be integrated with another set of catalog and provisioning APIs.
1 minute left. Good.
And yes, I'm almost done. Just to highlight, so as mentioned before, Waldur is used also for Lumi, and this was one of the reasons for starting the Puhuri project. In that case, essentially we have Puhuri core, which is distributing the resource allocation, and MyAccessID for identity layer. It's very similar to the EuroHPC federation stack, minus the added value services like orchestrators and direct interactive compute. And just to finalize, I mean, Waldur is a system which can be used for building more advanced systems. Lexis is one example, but nowadays it's essentially referred to as zero trust architecture. And I'd like to stop here, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilja. Any questions for Ilja? If not, I have one, and Ilja knows it's coming. Since both Waldur and Easy are part of EFP, do you see any ways to integrate these two?
Yes, sure. Actually, it slightly depends on the role of Waldur, whether it's used as one sitting next to the HPC site or the one which is essentially aggregating information from the HPC site. In the latter case, essentially the software discovery is the easiest option. So it's maybe more towards the Surname FFS integration than Easy specifically. But if there would be certain information that Easy would be exposing, let's say performance metrics of executed jobs using software and so on, this would allow to essentially expose a bit more high level, not high level, but a bit more high quality information about the software stacks and its usage on a specific system. So that would be one approach. And the other one is to potentially use Waldur is a tool for management of the Easy channels, software distribution channels. So this would assume a bit more custom integration with CBMFS, but I think that would allow to have a quite holistic view then on setup of services and their exposure to specific user groups. But yes, I mean, probably there is more, but this I think is something where it would be easiest to do a POC integration and probably easiest to clarify if there is a added value there.
Yeah. And there's a lot of opportunity in that in EFP, of course. We'll be working closely together. Okay. There's no more questions. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Ilja. So we're basically on time for lunch.